many migrants have lower statuses. They are temporary migrant workers, they are agricultural seasonal workers, they are domestic workers on very short contracts, or they may be irregular migrants working and participating in the economic activity of the host country, but they don't have any legal status in the country. All these migrants are vulnerable. They're vulnerable because they don't vote, they don't complain, mostly. They fear being recognized by the state authorities, they fear being arrested, detained, deported.
Second DVD.
What can the United Nations do to protect migrants' rights? The United Nations can do several things at several levels. First of all, there is the human rights mechanisms of the United Nations. You have, for example, treaty bodies. Treaty bodies are, for example, the Committee on the Human Rights Committee, the Committee Against Torture, the Committee on the Rights of the Child, the Committee on the Rights of Migrant Workers. So these committees will receive every 2, 3, 4 years, depending on the system, reports from the states on how to protect human rights generally.
However, the rights are violated on a daily basis. So what is really interesting to see throughout the world is that there are developments, both on a legislative level, policies that are actually developed to protect undocumented migrants' basic fundamental human rights. For example, access to fair working conditions. In many places, even though undocumented workers are exploited or abused, they might be able to challenge their employer in court. They might be able to go to the labor inspectorate. Undocumented children in a number of countries are able to attend compulsory level education.
There are two reasons why we needed an international convention. First, the domestic workers are often and still are excluded from labor legislation in many countries, so they are not covered by legislation. And also international labor standards from the ILO often excluded also domestic workers. This is one reason. The other reason is all the reports of abuses of human rights and labor rights that this category of workers, often women, and many of them, I mean we are talking about millions of them, 52 million officially. We think there are probably double that amount, and abuses are recurrent. So the ILO discussions that we had to adopt the convention was with an objective to change a relationship, an employment relationship based on exploitation, into an employment relationship based on rights.
None of those rights are possible without having a firewall, without having no duty for service providers, for police, for anyone who is in contact with providing these services to undocumented migrants. They should not be required to report the undocumented migrants to the immigration authorities. Because if they are required to report, that creates a culture of fear. And most undocumented migrants would not want to exercise those rights, even if they have the right, because they fear that in going to the hospital, and going to school, and going to the birth registry at the town hall, they will be reported and that will lead to deportation.
Ratification is a first step. It means the governments, the countries that ratify, accept the obligation. Now, of course, in practice, we have to see how this obligation is implemented.
So there's a huge need, even though there are continuous abuses and discrimination, there are very interesting practices that are being waged by civil society organizations, by health professionals, by education professionals, by labor inspectors, by local authorities, regional governments, and these practices should be discussed more and should be developed more.